And so we do have the law on our side in that respect. I just want to share one story with you to give you an idea of why it is that I'm so impassioned about protecting whales. And some of you may have heard this story, but it's really one that changed my life. And it goes back to 1975. And this is when I was one of the co-founders of the Greenpeace Foundation. And when I was with Greenpeace, I came up with this idea to protect whales, which was to run small rubber boats between the harpoons and the whales. Our reasoning being, we were reading a lot of Gandhi at the time, and our reasoning being was that if they wouldn't risk killing a human being to kill a whale. So in June of 1975, I found myself with Robert Hunter in a small little rubber boat in front of a 150-foot steel Soviet harpoon vessel that was bearing down on us at full speed in very, very rough waters. And in front of us, this 8 magnificent sperm whales that were fleeing for their life. And every time the harpooner tried to get a shot, I would maneuver the little rubber boat to block his path. And that was frustrating him until the captain on that Soviet vessel came down the catwalk up to the harpooner, screamed in his ear, screamed an order. Then he turned to us and smiled, looking down at us in our little boat. He smiled and brought his finger across his throat. And that's when I realized Gandhi wasn't going to pull us through that day. And a few moments later, there was this incredible explosion, and this harpoon flew over our head, this 150-pound harpoon with a grenade tip on the end. And it slammed into the back of one of the female whales in the pod, and she screamed. It was a very, very human-like scream, and she rolled on her side in a fountain of blood in agony. And as she did so, the largest whale in the pod hit the water with his tail with a thud and disappeared. And we had been told by all of the experts that that whale would come up underneath of us and attack us while defending his pod. And so I can tell you it was with a lot of anxiety that we waited for 50 tons of very angry whale to come up underneath of us. When suddenly the ocean erupted behind me, I turned in time to see the whale hurl himself out of the water straight at the harpooner on the Soviet vessel. And he was ready for them. They always are. And he had an unattached harpoon, and he pulled the trigger and at point blank range fired another harpoon into the whale's head. And this whale screamed and fell back into the water also. Now there's blood everywhere, and 2 whales that were screaming in agony on the surface of the sea. And as he was rolling about on the surface, I caught his eye. And this whale looked straight at me and dove. And now I saw a trail of bloody bubbles coming at us real fast. And this whale came up and out of the water so that the next movement would be to fall right down on top of us. I was looking right up at the whale, and there was his eye right there looking straight at me. And what I saw in that eye changed my life forever, because that whale understood what we were trying to do. Because I saw his muscles move, and with a great effort, he went back, and I saw his body disappear beneath the surface. His eye went beneath the sea, and he died. He could have taken our life and chose not to do so. But I saw something else in that eye too, and it was pity. And not for himself or his kind, but for us. That we could take life so thoughtlessly without any regard or respect. And why were we killing these whales? The Russians were killing whales, sperm whales, for one reason only, for spermaceti oil for lubricating machinery. And one of the pieces of machinery that they were building was with whale oil was intercontinental ballistic missiles. And I said, here we are destroying this incredibly intelligent, socially complex, gentle creature for the purpose of making a weapon meant for the mass extermination of human beings. And that's when it struck me, we are insane. And from that day on, I have fought on the oceans for whales and for sharks and for turtles and for seals and for seabirds, but not for people. Now, although ultimately people will benefit from this, because if we don't save these animals, we don't save the oceans, and if the oceans die, we die along with it. But a few years later, in 1986, we sank half of Iceland's whaling fleet and sent it to the bottom and destroyed their whale processing plant. It was a $10 million hit on their whaling industry, which shut them down for 17 years. And when they tried to recover this year, we went after them, and when we were 2 weeks away with the Farley Mowat, they stopped whaling. So we shut down Iceland. But well, after sinking those boats, it was actually quite interesting. I was doing a talk show in Vancouver about this, about 3 days after the sinking, when somebody called in a bomb threat to protest my violence, which I thought was a little strange. But anyway, as I left, we had to evacuate the building because of the bomb threat, and the police were there, and the reporters showed up. And one reporter said, well, Greenpeace has just called you an eco-terrorist for what you did. I said, oh, you know, what do you expect from the Avon ladies in the environmental movement anyway? They've never, ever forgiven me for that. But one of the Greenpeace, my former colleague in Greenpeace came up to me and says, I just want to let you know that what you guys did in Iceland was despicable, reprehensible, criminal, and unforgivable. I said, so? He says, well, I think you should know what people in this movement feel about you. I said, John, I don't care what you feel about me. I don't care what Greenpeace thinks about this. I don't care what any human being on this planet thinks about this. You find me one whale anywhere on this planet that disagreed with what we did that day, and I promise you we won't do it again. They are our clients, not you. And so that's why we go to sea, is to represent the whales and to fight their fight. We are Neptune's Navy, and we're trying to protect the oceans from ourselves, really, is what it comes down to. And unless we learn to live in harmony with all of the other species on this planet, then there's not much future for ourselves. We have to learn to live within the boundaries of ecological law. Earlier this year, I was criticized quite severely in the United States. I actually made a national news story out of a statement I made. I just happened to say that worms were more important than people. And I was on the talk show host for 2 weeks on that one. Did you actually say that worms are more important than people? I said, yeah, I said that. Well, how do you justify that? Well, it's very simple. From an ecological point of view, worms can live on the earth without people. People cannot live on the earth without worms. Take away the worms, we die. Take away the people, worms continue to go along happily so. So from an ecological point of view, we are not the demigods that we think we are. You know, sometimes I call us Homo arrogantus, or also Homo ignoramus. But the fact is that we are not the daunted, superior beings that we like to think we are. Our brains, each of our brains, you and I, is about the average size of 1,350 cubic centimeters. The orca brain, the largest dolphin, is 6,000 cubic centimeters, and the largest brain to have ever evolved on this planet is the sperm whale brain with a capacity of 9,000 cubic centimeters. And all mammals from mice to people have 3-lobed brains, except for cetaceans, dolphins, and whales, which have 4-lobed brains. So the most complex, highly evolved brain to have ever evolved on this planet is the whale brain. That means something. Meanwhile, NASA is spending billions of dollars of our money searching through space looking for extraterrestrial intelligences, and when they find some microbe on Europa, or the possibility as such, they go ecstatic. But nobody's spending very much on the possibility of communicating with intelligent life forms on this planet. And these are non-manipulative intelligence, but their intelligence is all the same. And there's so much about the natural world that we have yet to learn and yet to discover. But as long as we set ourselves over and above all these other species, we'll never really truly appreciate what all of those other species are capable of or what they mean. We know they feel, we know they have emotions, we know they think. And one of these days, I believe that if we actually put just a fraction of the amount of money that we spend on space research into trying to communicate with them, we will one day be able to communicate with them. One scientist that I debated with one time from NASA, he said, well, proof that they're not intelligent is they'll never be able to explore space. I said, and why would they want to? See, as T.S. Eliot, the poet, once said, we'll never cease from exploration, and the end result of all of our searching is we'll be back where we began in the first place, only this time we'll know where we are. Whales and dolphins and most other species on this planet know where they are. They know what they are. We're the ones that are lost in that sense. So anyway, all we can do is go out there and fight for those who are the victims of other members of our species and try to do the best we possibly can. And we like to give people from all over the world an opportunity to crew on our ships because we look on it as a form of empowerment, that they can understand that as individuals they can make a difference. And if more and more of us understood that we have the power to change the world, that is how things change. Never ever depend upon governments or large institutions or organizations to change things. They never have, they never will. All change comes from the passion of small groups or individuals. Because of Diane Fossey, the mountain gorillas of Rwanda continue to survive. People like Baruti Galdikas and Jane Goodall and Dave Wingate, who single-handedly saved the storm petrel of Bermuda. And I could go on and on and on. I mean, what an incredible legacy, the fact that you lived, you intervened, and a species continues to survive that would be extinct otherwise, or a habitat was protected. That is something worth fighting for, not for some sheik's oil well somewhere, or certainly not for Exxon. And that's what wars are all about today. So, you know, in fact, I find it very incredible when people say, how can you risk other people's life to save a whale? Well, John Howard, how can you risk so many people's lives to protect the oil companies? You know, why is that okay, but protecting whales is not? You know, it seems that we have a very, very strange and warped sense of what values are, in that we're willing to not only risk our lives and kill people for resources and property, but we fail to take that kind of stand when it comes to the preservation of the natural world which supports us. So I'm not really too concerned about people's criticisms about the risks that we take. All of my crew understand those risks, and they all think that those risks are worth taking, because what we're fighting for is the very future of life upon this planet, and that is worth taking those risks for. Thank you.